Assalamu alaikum. Human capital is one of the most important resources for societal development. A national census is important not only because it measures this human capital, it's an important tool that helps to shape the country's future by allowing the government and policymakers to make plans and decisions concerning the overall population. It not only gives valuable insights into our social condition, but also guarantees the even distribution of resources among us. It gives each one of us the chance to put on record who we are, where we are, what we do, what we have to offer, and what our current situation is. I'm Zaishan Amir, and this is the Fourth Estate. The Maldives conducted its first modern census in 1977. In light of the country's rapid pace of development and changing population trends, the government decided to conduct the census every 5 years instead of the conventional 10 years. The census returned in 1985, and since then, the census has been held every 5 years except for the one in 2005, which was delayed to 2006 due to the tsunami disaster in 2004. This year, the census is back with a new slogan, Count Me In, and will be conducted from the 20th to 27th of this month. The Census 2014 will also collect information on foreigners living in the country, which means that this time it doesn't matter if you were born in Male or Moscow, you're part of Maldivian society now and you matter. To talk on the Census 2014 project, we have here with us today Assistant Director at the National Statistics Bureau, Fatmat Riaza, and Senior Statistical Officer at the Bureau, Mariam Mirfat. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
To start off, why is it important to conduct a national census?
Well, a census is the biggest or the hugest statistical operation which is conducted in any country. Census could be of any form or type. It could be an agricultural census, it could be an industrial census, or it could be an economic census. In Maldives, so far we have only been conducting the population and housing census, and which basically and essentially gives us the count of the total population. Why this is important is because it's the only way we get a count of our population, and census gives us the count of the residential population living in an island. In Maldives, we have the registered population which is maintained by the island councils or the city council, and which does not mean that everyone who is registered in that island reside in that island. So census gives us a count of those who are residing in islands, which is essential for us to provide the basic services and facilities and for the population living in that area or that locality. Apart from that, for population and housing census give us a count of the population like I mentioned, and we are able to get the population by different ages and by sexes. When we talk about the population by different ages, in Maldives we are saying that our population mostly consists of the youth population, and it's only the census that we know that it is our youth population which is growing, and the number of children living in our population, and as well as how much is our elderly population consisting or comprising of. Through population and housing census, we are also able to get the population growth rate by which we are able to determine the rate at which our population is expanding or growing. So through this, currently our population growth rate is 1.69 or 1.7. So when we get a count of this population in our census 2014, we will know exactly what's the rate at which our population is rapidly increasing, whether it is increasing or not, or it is declining, or we are moving towards an elderly population. In addition to this, in our population and housing census, the first thing we do on the very first day is do a listing of all the places. So this listing is used as a sample frame for our surveys conducted in the upcoming years. So we conduct our census every 5 years, and in between we have many socio and economic surveys which have been carried out, and this gives us a better situation of our population and of our economic and social situation in the country. And for us to do that, we need to have an updated list of our houses as well as households. So census provide us this list which could be used for different purposes, and by and the data which we get from the census is used for enormous purposes by the policy makers and by the researchers as well. So it is an important operation which the government carries out every 5 years.
Now, what kind of information will be gathered during Census 2014?
The question is designed in focusing on two areas majorly: the household area, which will be questioned to every household that is listed in the listing which is done on the 20th, and in the household area the questions will be asked focusing on the living condition of the households and the type of dwellings, whether it is an apartment or any other type of living area. And other than that, there are some questions which will be focused on the type of drinking water, what kind of facilities they have at their homes, etc. And for the second part is focused on the individual informations, the people living in the household. In that we are taking the basic information we'll be taking is the age, nationality, sex and the date of birth. And other than that, the migration, education, employment, elderly people's information, and the marital status and the fertility above 15 age group of the women's population.
Okay. Now, what are some notable highlights of this year's census in comparison with the previous censuses that we've had?
Unlike any previous censuses, we'll be including the foreigners living in the Maldives, excluding the tourists living in the Maldives during the census reference period, which is the 20th of September, midnight of 20th of September. That we'll be including for the first time in the census.
Okay. Now, back in the 2006 census questionnaires were scanned using the ICR method, which stands for Intelligent Character Recognition. Now, we understand that this helped to speed up the process and increase the accuracy of the results. Now, of course, an accurate census is in everyone's interest. So what is being done to improve census accuracy this year?
Yes, just like you mentioned, in 2006 was the first time we used the ICR technology. In fact, it's ICR, Intelligent Character Recognition, and OMR, Optical Marker Recognition. We use this process, this technology for the first time, like I mentioned, in 2006, and it did help us to speed up our scanning process, because previously we have been doing the manual entry of census data, and it took us almost 1.5 years to bring out the final product or the final results of the census. So when we used the ICR technology in 2006, we were actually able to derive the results within 8 months, and we had our final tables out and available for the public to use within 1 year's time. So we take this as one of the best practices we have had in census, and like in 2006 we are using the ICM technology in this year's census as well. So we will be starting off with our ICR scanning process in October, and our questionnaire which is being used in census, it is printed in that quality and with special character recognition, and we hope that compared to the last time we would be able to process the data a bit sooner than last time and have the results out by May 2015. But like in other censuses, we will be bringing out the preliminary results within 7 days after the census has been completed.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, the census is a huge statistical operation that the country is witnessing. Now, what are some of the challenges that you face in conducting the census?
For this time, we'll be facing a lot of challenges, especially with the security lock system in the households. which will be while during the daytime. Our work starts morning 9 o'clock. The field work will start at morning 9 o'clock, and during that time most of the households will be locked and most of the people will be working even if it's a Saturday. And the second thing will be taking the data from the foreigners. Usually the foreigners work for a long period of hours during the day. Our work, field work starts from morning 9 o'clock till evening 6 o'clock, but the foreigners, their work finishes around 6 or 7 o'clock. So targeting to collect information from the foreigners will be a huge challenge for us.
Just to add on to that, since we are counting the number of foreigners in the country, we need to carry out this operation in almost every island where there's a person living at the time of the census reference time, so which includes counting the number of people living in uninhabited island also, and resorts under construction, as well as islands which are being developed as regional airports also. So this requires us for us to involve enormous human manpower for us to carry out the field work also. So right now we are coordinating with different atoll councils and island councils of ways of how we are going to collect data from those who are living in such islands, because there might be even 1 or 2 people living on these islands, and for us to have a successful census we need to include this their information in the census as well. So we are currently working out the details of how we are going to collect the information from them as well. So this is an enormous challenge for us in terms of the logistical arrangements and for sending enumerators to these islands to gather their information. Apart from that, a lot of Maldivians, especially with the development in Hulmale and the floods that has come up in Hulmale, most of them are those who are residing in Hulmale. They are commuting to Male every day and going back to the Hulmale at night. Like Mirfat mentioned, our teams will be working during daytime from morning 9 to evening 6. So to collect the information from those who are unavailable during the daytime would pose difficulties for our teams, which would mean that we would have to send out our teams into the field during night time also. So we would request the public that if they could give us cooperation during the census week, and if they could inform beforehand that when they would be available at their households, so that our teams can go and collect information from them.
Now, of course, in the census, there'll be the risk of an undercount, or even in some cases, there could be an overcount. So what is being done to prevent this challenge in particular?
In census, we collect data based on the UN principal recommendations. So according to the UN principal recommendation, and one of the essential features of census is that each person must be enumerated at one well-defined point of time. That's why we have a reference point of time when we collect data in census. In Maldives, this time, like in our census, this time we have the reference point as 00 hours midnight of 20th September, which is 00 hours, right? 00 hours, yeah. So those who are living, where they were residing at the reference point of time, we will be collecting their information based on that. And in census, we have set certain procedures and methods and approaches whereby we make sure that nobody is counted twice, as well as nobody is omitted. So this is one of the unique feature of census, whereby we just don't base the count. We just don't count the person based on where he is registered or where he was at the time. We collect information based on his residence, or where he was residing, or where he had his living arrangement at the time of census. So we make sure that nobody is counted twice. And those who were, like, suppose not everyone lives in normal households, so some of them might be living in vessels, so we will be enumerating them from the vessels as well. If they were residing in the vessel, have their living arrangements in the vessel at the place of at the point of our reference time. So we count everyone by place where they were sleeping and residing at the time of our census. And the other feature that we have in the census is to avoid undercounting and overcounting is right after the census we conducted a post enumeration survey by which we check the accuracy of the data that we have collected in the census. So this is one of the checks we have to make sure that the reliability of the data we have collected in census.
Now, how much is the government spending on the census this year? Do you think it's a justifiable amount?
The estimated budget for census we had put forward was 29 million rupiah, and we did it was approved and we did get the budget. So we are expecting that with this budget we would be able to carry out the census operation unless there's no more hiccups in the whole process.
So, is there a mop-up period where enumerators revisit households that were not reached during the first phase?
No, actually. Once the census period is concluded or it's completed, a period is over, none of our enumerators will visit any of the household because we are collecting the data fixed within the certain time period and reference to a certain time in. So again, that's the unique feature of a census, and that's why we have enumerators working in the field during these 8 days to capture everyone's information and we'll make sure that nobody is mixed out. And the procedures that we have set in the census is set in such a way that it captures everyone, be it the person is living in the household or whether he is in a resort or whether he is on the sea at the time of the census or even he is out of the country. So the way that we have set our procedures and methodologies in the census, we are expecting that everyone will be enumerated.
Okay. Now, I think this is going to be a pretty popular question. Yes. Why was there no census in 2011? Why did we have this 8-year gap between 2006, when a census was last held, and now 2014?
Well, since 2010, we have been trying to develop administrative registers to conduct a register-based census in the country. Register-based census is something which is being commonly practiced and mostly done in Nordic countries, in European countries, where they have registers fully established. So it was proposed to us by the government at that time to conduct a register-based census in 2011 instead of a door-to-door canvas enumeration. So, but for us to conduct a register-based census, one of the essential precondition is to have well-established administrative register or a central population register established with high quality and of good coverage and which is linked to different databases. And currently we are in the process of developing these registers. So it was kind of a testing phase for us at that time, and we were able to identify where our registers were weak, and we have not given up on the idea of going forward for a register-based census, but it takes time for us to develop the registers and move towards a register-based census. So since our registers are of not that quality and we lack certain registers in certain areas, so we have decided to move forward with the normal census, which is the canvas census.
Okay. We'll be back after a short break. Please stay tuned with us for more. Welcome back. Now, which organizations are assisting Census 2014?
Census is a combined effort of all organizations in the government, private institutions and the public. and especially in the areas of releasing the staff during the census period to work with us. And we must mention we are thankful for releasing their staff with the minimal staff they have to take part in this national event.
Okay. Now, why are foreigners being included in this year's census? Why were foreigners not included in the previous censuses as well?
First thing, the foreigners residing in the country use the country's resources, the infrastructures, as well as our services. Similarly, they also contribute to our economy as well as the society, and they play a huge role in provision of education, healthcare services. As such, foreigners living in working in the Maldives is part of the country's population, given that the population has been growing at a very high rate. It is critical that we include them in the census. And it is important the characteristics of the foreign population, such as their living conditions, education, attainments, marital status, economic activities, be collected and analyzed similar to that of the local population in the Maldives. So special emphasis will be given to the enumerate the foreign population in the 2014 census.
Now, are there any restrictions as to which type of foreigners will be included?
Yes, all foreigners except for the tourists living in the Maldives at the census reference time, as previously I mentioned, the midnight of 20th September, the 00 hours, will be included in the census and enumerated in the household where his or her sleeping and living arrangements exist. And none of the tourists present in the Maldives during the reference hour will be included, which includes the guest houses, safari vessels, and other areas where they live as tourists in the Maldives.
Now, will Maldivians living overseas be included, and how?
In census, we collect data based on two methodologies. One is the de jure method, which is counting only those who are residing in the country at the time of census, and the de facto method, and those only present in the country, and also including those abroad. In Maldives, we use a mix of these two methods, whereby because our population is quite small, so we try to include almost everyone, even the person is living in the country at the time of census or even abroad. So according to the procedures that we have set in census, any Maldivian, whether the person is present in the country at the time of census reference, at the reference time of census, even the person is residing in the country or not, we include any Maldivians in the census. So those Maldivians who are abroad at the time of census, that is for temporary nature, like for holidays or for medical purposes, we include them at their last residence, the place which they were residing before going abroad. The same method is used for Maldivians who have moved out of the country, like migrated abroad and living, and who haven't been in the country for so many years. We still do include them in our census, and we try to collect their information from the place where they have lived before moving abroad, the last house they have lived before moving abroad.
Okay. Now, a certain section of the society tends to believe that the census is an invasion of their privacy and personal space. Now, what guarantee do the people have that their information will be kept confidential?
Under the statistical regulation of Maldives, which was passed in 2012, the information collected from individuals as well as household will be treated confidentiality, and it will not be used for any legal purposes. It is actually an offense to publish or disclose any individuals or household information, and the data which we are collecting in census, it will be used mainly for used for statistical purposes. So when we collect data, even though we are writing the name of the house or the person's name, when once the data collection has been completed and when we do the entry into our system, none of the individual person's name or the house number would be entered into our system, and it would be kept strictly confidential in our department. Similarly, once the data processing has been done, the final results would be brought out as aggregated data, where we won't be disclosing that in this household this number of people were residing, but when we bring out the final results, we will be giving the figures as the number of people living in certain island or certain place or in the, collective living quarters. This would be the level at which we would be bringing out the information, and by sex as well as by age group. Similarly, to the foreigners also the same rules will be applied. We won't be disclosing any individual information, and none of the data collected in the census would be shared with any other government agency or any institutions for that matter. That is from our side, and the enumerators which we are hiring for the process also, they have to abide by this confidentiality clause which is there in our statistical regulation. So before we send out the enumerators into the field as census enumerators, we sign an agreement with them to abide by the statistical regulation and keep the data which have been collected in the field as confidential information, and not to disclose it with any other enumerators working in the field with them as well.
Okay. Now, during Census Week, how can people be sure that the enumerators visiting their households are indeed from the census team and not from any other party?
Those assigned as enumerators to work in the census, they will be provided with the ID card which will have their passport photo, including their full name and the National Bureau of Statistics logo with it. And the card needs to be displayed at all times during the census working hours while they are working in the households as well as working back in the centers. For the whole period of time they are working from 8 in the morning till 8 in the night. From the field to the census center, they should have their passes, ID cards on their.
Okay. Now, some people think that a census is a waste of time and resources. How would you respond to this?
Well, census is the only means through which we get a count of our population residing in the country. This count is important for so many purposes. Firstly, we need to have this information for us to base our policies and planning and the administrative purposes. Like I mentioned before, census gives us the count of those who are residing in island, for which we need to provide the basic services like educational facilities and health facilities, and to think of other aspects of how we are going to bring development into that island. Census gives us a full picture of how internal migration is within a country. So we know that why if people are migrating from one island to the other, we know the reason why they are leaving their own island and moving to another place. This is something which the government needs to address at certain point of time and to bring development to these places and other such facilities for those who are living at two ends. And the other thing is it gives us a huge database for statistical and research purposes. We right now have more than 6,000 students studying in the Maldives National University, and this is a huge data set for them to use in their studies and research purposes, as well as other international donors and other private and public companies who are conducting surveys in the country. The census data could also be used for business purposes like estimating, to get a reliable estimate of consumer demand for different kinds of goods and services. For that, they needed size of the population by different geographic localities and locations. Then only they can provide the different services and facilities. Like for a businessman to invest in a certain place, they need to know the number of people, the number of people who would be interested in buying their products as well. So, well, it's not a waste of time and resources. It's actually putting forth the next step for us to move forward with our development and policies, as well as and to address the issues which are being faced in the society as well.
Okay. Now, when will the results of the census be released, and when and how can the public access it?
Right after the completion of the census, which is 27th September, within 7 days we will be bringing out the preliminary results of the census. This would be just giving a total count by that of national and by nationality and by island, by sex. This much information we would be bringing out in the preliminary results, and this would be available on our website as well. Right after bringing the preliminary results, we will be starting off with the scanning and data processing process. We are expecting that we will take about 6 months for the scanning, to complete the scanning process, the verification as well as data cleaning, and have the final results by May 2015.
Okay.
Again, this would be available for the public on our website, as well as we will be bringing out hard copies of the final tables.
Okay. Now, if we look at how the census is conducted in other countries of the world, say the US for example, the process is different to ours. First, the questionnaires are mailed out to every household, and if these are not returned, then this is followed by a second mailing and phone calls. If there is still no response, then an enumerator will visit the household. Now, how would you compare this process with ours, and do you think it's feasible here?
Well, when we talk about census in US, our population is quite small compared to them, right? Because they're counting millions and we are counting thousands here.
Yes.
And this is the practice which has been done in countries where the population is huge and in millions. And this is practiced because they first do the count of the population, and then there would be, that is using the short form, and then they would be selecting a sample within the population to mail the questionnaires through mails or through phone calls, and collect the information from the samples selected for the census. This is what is being practiced in Singapore as well and in Australia as well. For us, we are trying to cover the whole population in our census, since our population is small. So for that also we are taking 8 days to complete the census, whereas in US and in other countries they probably take 1 month for them to complete the whole operation. And I think it's the same in India as well. So the practice that we have been doing and so far carrying out in our country in Maldives here is that we try to do a complete enumeration of our population, whereby we fill the census questionnaire for each and every individual present at the time of census in the country.
Okay. Now, what were some of the landmark efforts carried out under the Count Me In campaign?
Various activities have been conducted so far, and to begin with, officially we have launched the Count Me In campaign in August 7th, last month, and poster competitions was focused on the grade schools, and they have been awarded for the best posters they have under this Count Me In campaign. Information regarding census has been provided through different channels, through the media as well as the radios, and there are also 2 census promotional songs which has been launched and which is been aired on the TV, as well as census promotional spots which gives information regarding the reference period and what kind of information will be taken during the census, which is aired on the TV channels. And from since the census is very near, we are almost counting 10 days lesser. We are conducting every weekend, specially focused on the foreigners as well as the Maldivians, lorry rounds which have audio clips which has 4 different languages, which is on Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, Sinhalese and English and Divehi, which gives information regarding the census, how it is being conducted, what kind of information we will be taking and when we are taking the information, and also requesting all the foreign employers who have a huge number of employees under them to give us support, to give the information during the census period, to give us some time from their busy time to give us information, especially on the individuals of foreigners.
Sounds very interesting. Now, what would be your concluding statements?
We would like to request the public to give us full cooperation during these 7 days, because within these 7 days we have to complete the enumeration of the whole population, and our teams will be visiting the households on 20th September. They would be visiting each and every household in the country on 20th September to take a list of those who were residing in the household at the time, census reference time. On the very first day they will take this list, and during the week, during the 7 days, they will be visiting each household to collect individual information of those who have been listed in the household. So if our team was not able to meet any of the household members when they first visit the household, they would be leaving a slip whereby with all the details of how to contact our teams and our main center, which would be placed in Darbarge, where we are setting up our main center in Darbarge. So please, once you get this slip, please give us a ring. Please do call us and set up an appointment, and we will send our enumerators to collect information from such households at the given time. And we would also request employers to allow their foreign workers, give them a leeway during this week so that they could provide us the information. And because right now one of the challenges and the difficulties we face is that when we did the pilot census in April, we were we noticed that the foreigners that we meet in the houses, they get a short time to spend in the house. It's like they are, after completing their job, they are able to come home around 7 at night, and again they have to go for their dinner or somewhere again at 9, so which gives us like 2 hours to count the 100 plus people living in those houses. So we request employers to give their full cooperation during this week and give certain times for their employees, especially the laborers and foreign employees, to provide, to give us the information, to take their time and give us the information within these 7-8 days. And the other thing, like Mirfat mentioned, was the security locked houses which we would come across in Male. We would like the households living in such houses to let us inform by calling our main center that the houses will be locked and they would be available at this time, so that we can arrange to send our enumerators to those houses at the given time and collect their information. And we also noticed that especially in Male, many of the houses does not have the house name on the door. So when our teams visit, they would be going with a map of the block or the area that they have been given, but we would very much like all the households living in that house to at least have the house name on the door, so that it would make it easier for our teams to identify the houses.
Okay. Would you like to add something?
She has added everything, but apart from that, especially for the companies which hold a lot of employees, we would like to request them, especially during the working hours, as Riaza has mentioned, to give us some leeway time to work, to help our enumerators to fill the forms, especially the huge number of laborers living in one labor quarter. So that's the main thing.
Sorry to cut you short, but that's all the time we have now. We wish the Census 2014 team all the best in its mammoth but important undertaking. This is me, Zaishanami, signing off, hoping to return next week to discuss yet another issue of national and social importance. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening. Sayonara.